No way!
Is that it?
That should be it.
Oh my god!
Is he gonna
Tries to go for the shimmy. Number attack. Oh, gets it.
What? 待ってどこでいやー
Granblue Fantasy Versus Rising, Cygame's second collaboration with legendary fighting game developers Arc System Works, has just concluded its first season with the release of Sandalphon this past February. And just like every fighting game ever, you know there's one question the entire player base wants answered. Who's the best character in the game? Who's got the most results through the game's yearish long lifespan? And who's gotten better over time? Is Nier still the game running top tier the community touted her as at launch? And just how balanced is the game actually? I'm Easy Freezing, and although I normally do this sort of statistical analysis for Smash or other big mainstream fighting games, well, my fellow Lumineering collaborator and friend Trade War plays a lot of Granblue and decided to hold another script hostage until we do this. So we'll be taking our dive into the world of anime together with Rising's results throughout its entire competitive lifespan, including 2 iterations of the Arc World Tour. But first, some methodology discussion. We'll be counting character data at events through Granblue's lifespan, top 64 placements for the 2 EVOs, top 32 placements for Liquipedia Tier 1 events, top 16 placements for Tier 2s, and top 8s for Tier 3s. Characters need to win meaningfully in bracket to get counted as either main or secondary, and also to note, despite doing our best on research, there's a lot of gaps in character data we had available, especially since Granblue rarely gets streamed at multi-FGC events until top 8. So we did the best we could given the resources and people we reached out to. The data we gathered was split into 2 groups. Tournaments that were hosted before August's patch 1.5 and its respective massive meta-changing balance patch, and tournaments that were hosted after. In particular, this will help us see just how much the balance changes implemented in the patch impacted the overall meta of the game to see which top tiers managed to survive the test of time. There's also a massive rule implemented at every tournament on the Arc World Tour that significantly impacts the dataset as well. DLC characters are banned at these events until a month after their release. This means that DLC characters are at a massive disadvantage in terms of accumulating results and may not be representative of their true strength. A most notable example of this is Beatrix, a DLC character that was released in such a strong state that Cygames put out an emergency patch prior to her legalization at Arc World Tour events. Obviously, that character was broken, but her results during that time of her being broken were near 0. So without further ado, here's what the results looked like in the first half of Granblue Season 1. Hey, just want to ask for a quick moment if you consider subscribing. I'd appreciate it. All right, thanks. Bye. For those who followed any Granblue at all during the first half of Season 1, the character with the most results by far shouldn't be surprising. As mentioned at the beginning of this video, Nier was one of the 4 characters added from transition between base game and Rising, and that's the first puppet character added to Granblue, brought with her high damage combos that controlled the whole stage. Death, Nier's puppet, could cancel specials into specials by using stocks, giving her mix-up and full screen control. Basically, she controlled the entire stage with great buttons and hit unseeable mix-ups until you died. Piloted by players such as Zippy, Taco, Elsa, Goji Koko, and Kanari, Nier made up 10.6% of results. Despite getting nerfed pretty significantly throughout patches up until 1.5, including gutting her combo reversal, EX Misfortune, she remained a constant at the top level of play. The person in second place is also equally unsurprising. Siegfried of the Dragon Knights clocks in at 9.1% of the total results from this time period. Siegfried's strengths came from his high damage and his massive buttons, not to mention his oppressive fireball. Most fireballs in Granblue present some level of universal counterplay to them. Fireballs that travel through the air can be rolled through, while those travel through the ground can be jumped over. Siegfried's EX Fireball can't be done by either, effectively forcing his opponent to hold his pressure, bolstered by mix-ups presented by his command stance. Siegfried's Rekka can cancel into parry, a command grab, or a safe turn ender that baits out dodges, basically making all pressure situations into a mental stack exploder. Also, he could do this! Sig remained strong through the entirety of the first season of Granblue, being piloted by players such as Tororo, Fitizen, Sonic-san, and Artorias. Together, Nier and Siegfried made up 20% of results. Truly insane. It'd be easier to keep track of majors that didn't have either of these 2 characters present in the top 8. The next 2 characters that defined the top level of Rising during this period were Seox and Bilal. Both of these guys were staple top tiers during Vanilla Season 2, and their strengths translated very well into Rising. Seox is a hyper-aggressive aerial rushdown character designed around high damage strikes and tricky air mobility. His numerous dives and air fireballs can all be blocked on plus if spaced correctly, and his grounded Rekka lets his pressure strings on the ground stay ambiguous and tricky. Rising also introduced his ultimate dive kick, a throw bait that effectively would punish a throw with death. Seox made up 6.61% of all global results, and most notably, Rookies won EVO Japan with the character. Bilal, on the other hand, is a Shoto turned up to 11. His fireball, while initially tricky to pilot, is able to cover dodges, grounded approaches, and aerial approaches. His advancing special guard crushes, and his normals are massive and plus on block. In fact, even his DP contains trickery and MDP's lack of invincibility, but plus on block frame data. However, where he truly shines as a trickster is in his parry and command grab, both having similar startup animations. Bilal's well-roundedness and stability is pretty much his greatest strength. He made up 5.61% of results, and just like rookies, Iron Damak was able to win EVO using the character. Lilwayne and his bros rounded out the top 5. You'd think the term joke character also implies a bad one, but Lilwayne's tricks all prey on human mistakes and mental stack to deal potent mix-ups and administer constant reaction checks. The most famous of which is his super skybound art, Yggdrasil. His ability to zone, not to mention the buffs to his defense given by ultimate skills, helped shoot his results up to 4.99% during the first half of Rising. Piloted by players such as Terrara, Busker Luz, Incendiate, Chris G, and Release Bogus. We mentioned each of the DLC characters had a month-long stopgap between their release and legality. Despite that, some of these characters were strong enough to spike up in results even past the delay. 2B from Nier Automata, Granblue's first ever guest character, was the only DLC character to make it into the top 10, capping out at number 9 with 3.62% of the results, despite only having half a season to work with. 2B's playstyle is very unorthodox compared to the rest of the cast, notably trading out dashing normals for with cancelable normals similar to her game of origin. If you know anything about Rising, you know how strong having a dashing light attack is, but 2B more than makes up for it with her very powerful zoning and ambiguous pressure strings that let her lock her opponents down. Piloted by players like Vermilion, Sanchi, and 2Easy, 2B found the most results out of any of the mid-season introductions. The other DLC character to note within the season was Beatrix. Don't let her low 2.24% play percentage fool you. Her period of legality only encapsulated the final 2 months of the season. Beatrix's simple, sole bad guy inspired kit with an emphasis on rushdown absolutely dominated rank play in her first month of release. So much so, in fact, that Cygames pushed out an emergency patch to rein her in a little bit before her Arc World Tour legality. The other 2 characters released during this period, Lucilius and Vayne, did not have a significant impact on play. In fact, Vayne was tied for dead last this season with Avatar Bilal, both of whom settled at 0.5% of play. Avatar Bilal takes the glass cannon archetype to its logical extreme. Abel shares a lot of similarities visually with Bilal, but with a set of notable differences. His strong projectiles complement his gap-closing dive kick, and most notably, he can trade what little health he has to cancel specials into specials. This extreme next touch wins playstyle makes him naturally deeply volatile, unsuited for long bracket runs, but always capable of winning. Vayne, on the other hand, suffered from perhaps too much stability. Vayne's solid pressure tools and defensive playstyle made him lack the X factor that top or even mid-tiers contained. He just had no clear-cut win condition. After EVO's conclusion, version 1.5 was released with Verzusia, and with it, major changes came to every character and the system engine. 6XL and ultimate skills both now heavily scaled as combo starters, smoothing out the damage on these strong options. Every character also received major balance changes, and the landscape of top tiers changed drastically. Most notably, Nier got shot in the kneecaps, dropping all the way down from first to the game to 26th. Whenever Nier gets hit or when death is recalled, it's now put on a timer. This singular timer now makes Nier's defense paper thin, and although she still has the high damage mix-ups and combos, she now has to be much more careful lest she lose access to system mechanics such as Raging Strike extensions on mashes. The character with the biggest come-up was Catalina. Granblue's defensive Shoto got a massive suite of buffs to her kit, most notably her 5U Light Wall, now allowing for mid-screen extensions while also serving as a deterrent to Brave Counter, the game's primary defensive mechanic. Catalina was picked up by a great number of players in Season 1.5, with Saki, Koji Coco, Elsa, and Terrara finding success with her. Cat shot from 30th, which was the 3rd lowest, only above the aforementioned Vayne and Abel, to 4th, making up 4.67% of the game's results alongside Beatrix. So yeah, Beatrix ended up splashing down at top 5 after initial adjustment. Her aggressive rushdown playstyle, supported by her great gap-closing tools, pressure extenders, and damage, all lended themselves for a character that seemed archetypically built for Rising. Her unique mechanic, Delta Clock, allows her to extend combos for high damage off mid-screen skirmishes when at low health. Perfect for comebacks. In particular, Have a Nice Day and Gomera, 2 players with extensive competitive backgrounds in Granblue, both switched to Beatrix for the duration of this patch, and both found massive success with this character. Siegfried and Bilal made it through the 1.5 with the fewest nerfs, and thus remained at the tippy top level of play. By later in the meta, not only were the already aforementioned players of these 2 characters sticking with the character, but more and more players started to pick them up as secondaries, as their relative simplicity and overall general success made them worthwhile to keep around. Sig had the most results, capping at 8.97%, and Bilal followed close behind at 7.48%. Cagliostro and Grimnir round out the top 6. Both of these characters are functionally very similar. They're technical characters designed around manipulating the terrain of the stage. Cag with her traps and Grimnir with his seals. Through space control and good setups, both of these characters had risen steadily throughout the duration of Rising despite no real major changes in patches. Players simply began developing their meta more. Cagliostro settled at a 5.23% and Grim settled at a 4.3%. Overall, the meta shifted to be much more balanced within the back half of Season 1, with no character taking up more than 10% of results the way Nier had the patch prior. Additionally, during this time, 2 DLC characters were released. One of them, the formidable meta threat Inversusia, and the other, a universally agreed bottom 1 character in Vikala. It's not super difficult to see what makes Versusia strong. Take a look at her opponent's health bar after a single mid-screen conversion. Despite an awkward dash reminiscent of another Susie, Susanoo from BlazBlue, her ability to control large swaths of the screens with normals and projectiles made her a popular pick for players willing to put in the time to adjust to the different playstyles. In particular, Gamera, the GOAT of the game, learning her to cover some of his weaker matchups, and she settled at a 2.99% usage despite her 1-month ban from competitive play at the launch of the patch. Vicky, on the other hand, was a zoner who carried no threat behind her buttons. Her main mechanic, an item toss similar to characters like Faust or Platinum, carried too little threat behind them. Her inconsistency in combo routes, even being able to heal her opponent, combined with her low health and poor defensive buttons, made her the consensus bottom 1 character for the patch, supplemented by her lack of results, with only 0.57% of placements during this time period. Overall, the best character throughout all of Season 1 was Siegfried, dodging meaningful nerfs in 1.5 and remaining strong throughout the whole year of competition. But time moves on, and with the introduction of Sandophon in version 2.0, nerfs came for traditionally dominant characters like Siegfried and Bilal, and characters like Vikala and Ferry saw buffs to their damage and consistency. There's still a lot more Granblue left to be played. Believe in victory, Skyfarers.